everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and in today's video I'm going to be going through the best and the worst books that I read in 2025. So before I get into the video, please remember to like this video if you enjoy it and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I primarily read fantasy, thriller and romance books and I post videos every Sunday. So thankfully I have a longer list of books that I enjoyed rather than disappointments. I will try and leave links to any reading vlogs or any videos that these books are mentioned in. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the synopses of these books, or really too much detail will be here all day, so I will leave links below. So we'll go through my favourite books of the year. So these are all the books I read in 2025 that ended up rating a 5-star, and we do have all three genres that I primarily read. We have fantasy, we have thriller and we have romance books. So the first book on this list is I Let You Go by Claire Mackintosh. This is a thriller. This is also Claire Mackintosh's debut novel, so this was first published I believe in like 2016. This is set in the area that I live in, which also added to the book for me, and this is about a young woman whose son is killed in a hit and run accident, and whilst the police are investigating there aren't really any leads or anything like that. She moves to Wales and starts her life afresh. Now this doesn't sound all that interesting I would say from my synopsis, but this is genuinely one of the best thriller books I've ever read, and I know I haven't read too many, but this is genuinely one of the best ones that I have read and I'd highly recommend it. The plot twists in this were just absolutely fantastic, and honestly I've read quite a few Claire Mackintosh since and she hasn't been able to top this one for me. I know she's got a new book coming out this year, but I would highly recommend this one. Even like my mum loves this one. Everyone that I've recommended it to has also really loved it, so this is definitely very one of its kind of thriller for me. The next up is another thriller book, which is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. So this one, at the time I think I rated it a 4-star rating, but as time went on I really couldn't stop thinking about this book, which is why I bumped it up to a 5-star read. So in this one we follow our main character who is in an abusive relationship, and Jack doesn't let her go anywhere on her own so she can ask for help, and essentially he has created this room in their house where her sister who has Down syndrome will be coming to live with them so he can abuse her, and essentially she stays in this relationship to try and keep her sister safe, and it's about how she tries to get out of this relationship and what happens in it. So it is quite dark, so I would say Claire Mackintosh's one is the lighter side of thriller. I don't mean it like that, I mean all thrillers are quite dark, but this is really quite dark. So I know that a lot of people who have members of their family who have Down syndrome really struggle to read this book, and I would say that maybe give it a miss if it doesn't sound like it's for you, but I would say this is really dark. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience of reading this book. I think that this is definitely B.A. Paris's best book in my opinion, and I really enjoyed reading it. I find it really difficult to say I enjoyed it because I did, but it covers such dark topics, so I don't mean that I enjoy the dark topics, if that makes sense. I enjoyed reading this book, and like I said, I couldn't stop thinking about it for quite a while after I read it, to be honest with you, so that is why it is a 5-star read for me. And the next up, so the last thriller for a little bit of a while, is The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. So in this one we follow our main character who is trying to date in New York City. She doesn't seem to be having much luck. She sees a guy outside her apartment building that she lives in with her best friend. Shortly after this her best friend is murdered. I did enjoy this one. I think what made this for me was the twist. The twist was really good and I didn't see it coming. I think it's quite obvious what you think is going to happen, but what you think is going to happen isn't what actually happens. I will say this is more of like a popcorn fun thriller. I will say like I Let You Go and Behind Closed Doors are more deeper thrillers. This one was a fun popcorn thriller. It wasn't really too deep, but I did enjoy the twist in this one and I enjoyed the ride that I went on, so that is why this one is on the list, and it's definitely one of Frida McFadden's better thriller releases. And then next up we have our first fantasy release, which is The Will of the Many by James Islington. Now I feel like this is on everyone's best books, or even the sequel The Strength of the Few is on everyone's best books, and trust me the hype is so worth it. So this one we follow, it's like a Roman inspired fantasy world where everybody has something called will, and that is like your will to live and your will to do things, and you have to seed your will into this pyramid, but essentially like a pyramid scheme, and those higher up in the hierarchy get more will and those at the bottom of the hierarchy get less will, and they have to seed more will. This one follows our main character who who kind of gets himself wrapped up with quite a few different groups of people. So his adoptive parents want him to go to this academy to find out what happened to a member of their family. We have a rebellion group as well who want to get their hands on him, and he's also out for his own gain. And that's all I'm going to say about this book, because I think the less you know about it, the better. But this is definitely worth the hype. I have not yet read the sequel. I did get it for Christmas, so I'm hoping to read it soon. But this one is so worth it and so worth the hype. We then have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel to the Hunger Games series where we follow Haymitch's games and the second Quarter Quell. Now, I feel like this is just automatically a 5-star because I absolutely love the Hunger Games, but this one was so emotional. And we know that in the book series that Haymitch doesn't have any family left, and things are alluded to, but we don't ever find out really what happens in the original book trilogy. So this was such a good insight into his character and into the games and just Pan Am as a whole, and this was definitely a 5-star read for me. We then have 2 Abby Jimenez books. So this was the year that I read a lot of Abby Jimenez. So on this list we have Yours Truly and Just for the Summer, which are the second and the third book in the same series. That whole series is a 5-star for me. I did read the first one in the previous year. So these are romance books, but they are so much deeper than that, and they follow a lot deeper topics, and they are interconnected, so it is important that you read them in the right order, I think anyway. In Yours Truly we follow 2 doctors, one of which has worked at this hospital ever since she graduated, and one of which has recently moved, and they are essentially both going after the same promotion but for different reasons, and we learn a bit more about their lives, and they do end up falling for each other. In the third book we follow 2 characters who, every person that they date, when they break up with them, that person then goes on to find the love of their life, and they talk about it on a Reddit thread together, and they decide to date each other to hopefully break each other's curses, and then they will go on to meet the loves of their life. But obviously that is not what happens here, and they do end up falling for each other, and there is so much going on in this book. This one, Just for Summer, is definitely my favourite of this series. I think it was so good. Yours Truly and Part of Your Word as well, even though it's not on this list because I read it the previous year, they're definitely 5-star romance books for me. We then have Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This one took me by surprise quite a bit. I wasn't expecting to love this one as much as I did. We follow our couple, and they kind of know of each other through some mutual friends, and they have a one-night stand, and she ends up getting pregnant, and they decide to keep the baby and become friends to make co-parenting work. They both have limb differences. She has a hand that's not fully developed, and he has an amputated leg, so we have some great representation in here. But this book was just so wholesome. The dialogue in here and the humour, it was just so funny. Like, I was actually giggling out loud, and I just loved this couple so much. I loved the growth that they both went on, and how the friends around them were so supportive, and this was just such a cute read, and it was just, yeah, I just absolutely loved this one. We then have She Vanishes by Claire Douglas. This is another thriller book, and the last thriller book on this list. So Claire Douglas as an author is one of my favourite thriller authors. This one followed a woman whose sister vanished many years ago, and her family have never really accepted what happened to her. Essentially, the police don't really know what happened to her, and they think that she just ran away, and her family never really accepted this. They definitely thought there was much more to the story than this. And we follow them, I think, like 20 or so years later. They are like fully grown adults at this point, this woman and her mother, and we follow her trying to unravel what happened to her sister and basically that. And this was so good, very emotional as well, and I really loved this one. This was definitely one of the strongest Claire Douglas books I have read. I also gave The Couple at Number 9 a 5-star rating as well, but I read that the previous year. But this one was really good, and I highly recommend. We then have The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This one is on Kindle Unlimited, and I'd been wanting to read this one for quite a few years, but I was quite intimidated by it being a standalone fantasy book. So this one follows a family who live in this small village. We have lots of things going on here. We have like family problems, we have like problems with the government, and this was a really rich fantasy world. I don't really want to say too much about what it's about, because I think if you just go in not knowing too much, you'll really enjoy it and really not anticipate what's going to happen. I really loved this one. This had me like crying. All of our characters went on such journeys. It was just absolutely fantastic, and the fantastical elements of this were just brilliant. Yeah, I don't really want to say too much more than that. I just think it was absolutely brilliant. We then have One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. Now, this is the second book in a sort of series of standalones, and I actually read this one first because at the time when this was first published, it wasn't listed on Goodreads as part of a series, so I read this first. This one follows the brother of the love interest in the very first book, and it's his romance story with our main character Alice. So it's Alice and Charlie, and Alice moves out to she takes her grandma to this cabin by the lake because her grandma's not very well, and she wants to give her grandma basically a good summer. She's got things going on in her own life, so does Charlie, and it's basically about them kind of like forging a friendship and then it developing into a bit more, but it's so much deeper than that, and I just loved this one so much. We then have Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Rose Hill series. It was a romance, so we follow two main characters who fall in love. We have a single dad here and we have a famous pop star. Now she is going through a lot. She's been deceived, she's been lied to, and she just wants to get away from everything, and she ends up in Rose Hill, and this is where she meets our main love interest, and they again forge a friendship, forge a relationship, and again I was laughing, I was crying. This was just so good. Elsie Silver is such a great romance author. Surprised there was only one of her books on the list this year because I did read quite a few of her books. We then have two Kristin Hannah books, which is a bit of a surprise. So we have The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah and The Four Winds. So these are historical fiction novels. The Great Alone is set in Alaska, and it's set I think in the 80s after the Vietnam War. We follow our young character whose parents decide to move to Alaska because her father is struggling with like PTSD, and he is quite abusive to his wife, and they decide to move to Alaska to basically live a simple life, live in a homestead, and things escalate, and it's about this character's journey for her mother but also for herself. And this was, I was crying, you know, laughing, crying, all of it. So good. And then The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah is set during the Great Depression in America and the droughts in Oklahoma, and we follow our main character who is a mother of two children whose husband leaves her, and she decides to move across the country to hopefully give her children a better life, but that isn't quite what happens, and it's about their struggles, it's about people pulling together, and again, pride, just absolutely fantastic. Kristin Hannah is very quickly becoming a favourite author of mine, and I'm hoping to read more of her books next year. We then have The Wisdom of Crowds by Jo Abercrombie. This is the third book in the Age of Madness trilogy and the final book published so far in the First Law world. I can't really go too much into the plot of this one because it's like the 11th book in an ongoing like series. This series is a grimdark fantasy series. It's quite brutal. We do have quite detailed scenes of torture and things like that, but I think if you love fantasy you will love this series by Jo Abercrombie. This one was so good. I didn't see where this was going at all. It's completely unexpected what happened to a lot of our characters, and I'm excited to see if Jo Abercrombie writes more in the First Law world where we're going to go with this. This was really good, and just yeah, love Jo Abercrombie. We then have the final fantasy book on this list, which is Fury Song by Rosaria Munda. So I have been harping on about this series all year, finished it at the end of the year, but since I read that first book I was just hyping this up. This is a underrated YA fantasy series about dragons and like colonialism and things like that. I would highly recommend you read this. I will link all the vlogs that I've mentioned these books in if you want more details about what they are about, but this one is, if you're going to take any book from this list, I would take this series. It's so underhyped, so under loved, and I just think it was absolutely fantastic. Definitely one of the best YA series that I've read in a long time. I don't read much YA anymore because I just find it quite disappointing, but this was absolutely fantastic and really not what I expected. The final 5-star of the year for me was Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer. So this one is a ice hockey romance. I've never read a Stephanie Archer book prior to reading this book, and she has bumped her way up to my priority list for this year. This is like I said, it's an ice hockey romance. Follow Jamie and Pippa, who went to high school together, and they sort of went their separate ways, and then they end up working together again. Pippa is Jamie's assistant, and they are both very attracted to one another, and they begin a friendship, then a relationship. And again, I like romance books that have more going on. Pippa really has problems with believing in herself, and she's been shot down a lot over the years, and she really has lost her confidence. And Jamie has a lot going on with his mum, so they kind of help each other with those things, and they really grow together as a couple. And yeah, I just absolutely love this one. So those are all the books that I gave 5-star in the year of 2025. So I do think it is a good list. We do have a good mix of genres here, but I'm hoping to get even more 5-star reads next year. So we'll move on to the worst books I read in 2025. So these are all books that I rated 2 stars or below, or maybe even DNF'd in one case. So the first one we have is The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. I read this very early on in January, and I really did not like this one. Obviously it's on the worst books of the year, but this one, the the characters just had absolutely no chemistry, and it was just way too short, way too rushed, and it was just a bit meh, really. I sort of came out of it thinking this was rubbish. Now, I didn't really think much of this series in general. The first 2 books I think I gave both 3-star rating, so I definitely don't think I'll be checking out anything else by this author unless she publishes something and people go wild for it. This was just quite disappointing to me, and I was just left very disappointed with this one. So we then have 2 Tessa Bailey books. So we have Too Hot to Handle and Too Wild to Tame. Too Hot to Handle I gave a 2-star rating. Again, I just left this book wanting a bit more. I felt it was really rushed. The characters fell in love with each other after like a day together, and it was just completely unrealistic, and again I left wanting a bit more. And then the Too Wild to Tame, I actually DNF'd about 100 or something pages into this one, and I won't be continuing on with this series. This one, I just didn't like our characters. This series followed 4 siblings, and it was each of their love stories that they find on this road trip to honour their mum, and it was just a bit meh. And I knew that they were all going to fall in love within like 10 minutes, and it just wasn't for me. I just realised it's not for me, and I do really enjoy Tessa Bailey as an author, but this series just wasn't it for me. We then have 2 Renee Adieh books. So we have The Righteous and the Ruined, which is the 3rd and 4th book in the Beautiful series by Renee Adieh. So The Beautiful by Renee Adieh I read in 2024, gave it a 4-star rating, and then the series just goes downhill from there. So these 2 books were horrendous, and I wish I could delete them from my brain. This series was just a complete waste of time. It went absolutely nowhere. We started out with vampires in New Orleans, and then we ended up like God knows where with just random characters, random storylines. It was just awful. I would not recommend this series. The first book is really good. Like I said, it's a 4-star rating for me, but just don't continue. Just stop, because the series doesn't even follow that storyline anymore, and we just go off in so many different directions, and it felt like the author didn't really know what she wanted to do. Felt like she wanted to write a fairy romance, because that's kind of essentially what this ended up being. And then by the 3rd book, she knew that she'd messed up, and she tried to claim back interest with adding characters from her previous series, and this was just, yeah, this was awful. Absolutely awful. Do not recommend this series at all, and I was really disappointed. I'm angry talking about it. We then have Gothicana by Rue Nix. This was a DNF for me. This was recommended to me by a friend, and I wanted to try dark romance basically, and she recommended this one to me, and I just don't know if dark romance is for me. I really didn't like the writing style of this book, and I didn't like the concept of it either, so maybe that's a me issue, but I didn't really get too far into this one, so I don't really have too much to say. We then have The Crown of Oaths and Curses by J. Bree. This is the first book in this series. There are 2 novellas that you read beforehand, and what a waste of 600 pages is all I will say. I don't know how this is 600 pages long. This follows a witch and a fae, and they are fated mates, even though witches and fae are mortal enemies. They meet. The fae takes the witch captive and just throws her in the dungeon, and then just spends 600 pages whinging about how his mate is a witch, even though other people are giving her a chance and she is proving herself to be a good person. He just whinges for the whole 600 pages, and if I could get back the time that I read this book in, I would pay good money to get that time back, because this was just awful. Do not recommend this. And this author is so hyped up in like the fantasy romance space, and how are you reading this when it's just 600 pages of whinging? We then have The Fiancé Dilemma by Elena Armas. Now, I have enjoyed everything else that I have read by Elena Armas, but this was just really not it. I really didn't like our 2 characters. They had no chemistry. They were just forced together for the sake of a second book, and just really weird things happen. Like they just get intimate with each other in a wedding dress shop with everyone else just like waiting in the other room. It just was really made me feel uncomfortable and really cringy. I just really didn't like them, and yeah, did not like this book. I will check out future Elena Armas books though. I did enjoy the other 3 books that I read by her, so I think this was just a bit of a fluke. I just didn't like the characters. We then have The Dilemma by B.A. Paris. This is advertised as a thriller book, and it is not thrilling in the slightest. It's essentially about a couple with 2 children, and the woman is throwing a 40th birthday party, and she's been like waiting her whole life to throw herself this massive 40th birthday party. And then her daughter is currently in, I think in like Malaysia or something, and she finds out that her daughter is having an affair with her godfather, which is like her husband's best friend. And then the husband doesn't know this, but he finds out that their daughter may have died in a plane crash, and it's essentially like 300 pages of them debating whether to tell the other one this bit of information about their daughter, but they decide not to because they don't want to ruin the party for everyone. that's all I have to say on that one. We then have Dead Med by Frida McFadden. So it's kind of interesting, she's on both the best and the worst list. This is a medical thriller and we follow many different character perspectives. Basically, in this anatomy lab, someone gets shot and killed and we just follow these different perspectives in the lead up to the killing. Honestly, by the third chapter, I thought, I have to read look to your left, look to your right, people standing either side of you will become a doctor. Please, just no. And yeah, this was just, it was so repetitive, and that's my issue with it. It was just so repetitive. You could basically work out who did it in the second chapter, and then we just had to keep going on with this nonsense. The last thriller book on this list is In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware, and this one is not set in a dark, dark wood and was just very disappointing, very predictable, and that's all I really have to say on this one. I have a very mixed history with Ruth Ware. I seem to either really like her books or I really don't, and this one unfortunately fell in the really don't enjoy category. So I wouldn't recommend this one, but if there are other Ruth Ware books that sound interesting, I'd definitely check them out. We then have the final romance book on this list, which is The Summer You Found Me by Elizabeth O'Rourke. So this is the third book in the Summer series by Elizabeth O'Rourke, and I have now DNF'd this series and will not be continuing. The first two books were just like a 3-star rating. This one was a 2-star, and I'm really not interested in continuing and reading any more about these characters. This one follows a woman who, she's the ex-wife of the male love interest in the second book, and it's basically her and her ex-husband's best friend, but she was just like the worst person and I just wasn't rooting for her. I didn't like her. The male love interest could do a lot better and deserved a lot better, and I just didn't like this, and I just don't want to continue with this series anymore. And then the final book on this list, which was actually the most surprising disappointment of the year, which was The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. So this is set around World War I, and we follow siblings trying to make their way back to each other. And this, I feel like Catherine Arden didn't know what she wanted to do with this book, because this implies that there's some sort of like paranormal aspect to it, which there just wasn't, and it was just very slow, quite boring. And you know, I love a good historical fiction book, so it wasn't the fact that it was historical that it was boring. It just, not a lot really happened and we just kept going around in circles, and I didn't really feel connected to any of the characters, and it was just a bit meh, really. That's the problem with a lot of these 2-star books. They were all just a bit meh, really. So if any of them sound interesting to you, again, I will leave links to the vlogs that they're all featured in. If any of them sound interesting to you, you might enjoy them, but I just personally did not. That is it for the best and the worst books that I read in 2025. So I think we have quite a mix of genres on both of these lists, so I'm interested to see what happens in 2026. I'm hoping to get more 5-star books than disappointing books. We shall see what happens. So that is going to be it for this video. Comment down below if you've read any of these books. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'd love to chat with you in the comments. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. We have so much fun content planned for 2026, so many reading vlogs and hopefully more 5-star reads. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.